Hi,
Hi
Charles.
there.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So
All
Krishna is
right.
the president. Sorry, I'll give you a quick introduction. He's the president of the Electric Vehicle Association of Thailand. And he's also responsible for managing the corporate and product communications for BMW and also the corporate affairs of BMW Thailand. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Charles. All right. Okay. So thank you very much for sharing and for giving us the opportunity to speak to all of you today. So a little bit about Thailand that I would like to present a few topics for you. So let's move to our to my next slide, please. So basically, the three topics that I like to talk about. So of course, can't go without talking a little bit about the Electric Vehicle Association in Thailand, and then talk a little bit about the status of the automotive industry here in Thailand, and of course, the last one is of course about the policy of the XEV here in Thailand. So next slide, please. Okay, next one. Okay, a little bit about Electric Vehicle Association of Thailand. We basically was found in the year 2015, so it has been 5 years already. So far, we have about 152 corporate members and about 48 private members. The benefit for the association is that we have quite a good mixture of the private industry, from the automotive industry, from the motorcycle industry as well. A lot of the part and components are our members. And at the same time, we also have a very good mixture of the academic fields. So quite a number of the university and colleges are our members. So we work on both sides of the industry and also on the academic side as well to try to develop the EV market in Thailand, and making sure that we are hand in hand, working on both sides in terms of the soft skill for people development as well as the product side of the industry as well. Let's move on to the next one. Now let's talk about the current status of the automotive industry in Thailand. Here, basically, I just want to show you some up and down in terms of the vehicle production, export, and domestic sales here in the country. So as you can see that we have seen some up and down during the crisis, that we've seen some peak in the year of 2008 when Thailand was, on the, let's say, positive trend, moving up to about 1.3 million vehicle production in that year. And as you can see that in most of the period, our production for the local market is about half of what we export to other countries as well. So it has been in that manner for a long time. The peak period came in about 2012 when the total production of the vehicle reached about 2.4 million, and that was because of the government incentive scheme that we call the first car buyer scheme. In that scheme, the people who buy the first car, they can get the tax reduction, and therefore it make a lot of the, I would say, artificial demand in that year, because after that 2 years period, then the demand dropped down and production went down as well. So we would basically favor the policy where I would say that there's no need to create the artificial demand, but basically to create the natural demand from the buyers in terms of the future technology like BEV. We believe that it would be a good and a good positive movement for the government to support the buyers of BEV in the coming period, because so far we don't have the incentive for the buyer yet, but that has been into the let's say the proposal that we offer or we propose to the government for quite some times. Last year we had the total production of about 2 million, and of course in this year 2020, due to the COVID-19, we believe that production in Thailand would probably reduce to about half. So perhaps we would get to around 1.2 to 1.4 million of the vehicle production in this year. So let's move on to the next one. So basically, when we're talking about the battery electric vehicle in Thailand, we have in total around 12 models. And of course, you already seen what Singapore has, about 18 models, right? In Singapore, here in Thailand, we have about 10 to 12. Out of these 12 models, you can see the Thai flag in the middle here with the brand name FOM, which is from Japan, and another one not in this chart yet. So the only local BEV made here is FOM with the price of about 660,000 Thai baht. So that roughly is about 13,000 euro in general. And on the top range of the BEV that is offered in the market is, for example, the Audi e-tron. And of course, another one that we just have is the Porsche Taycan with the price of about 200,000 euro. So the wide range of the price is basically is seen across the BEV models offerings. But the important aspect of what we are talking here is the import duty of the vehicles. You can see that when you see the Chinese brand like BYD, like for example MG, these are subject to the import 0% import duty, which means that the vehicle can be imported to Thailand without any import duty, and the price is quite attractive. And the reason for this is the free trade agreement between Thailand and China. So the benefit is that the user would have more options for the BEV coming from China without this import duty. And I believe that the price range would be very attractive. And last year we had, let's say, a very good successful registration for the BEV in Thailand. About 1,500 of the registration, and that mainly came from MG ZS EV, which is the import model from China. So I believe that the government will, of course, will try to promote local investment for the local assembly of BEV. And most of the car company in Thailand are also interested. But of course, we have to see the actual situation on what would be the worst, let's say the best case scenario, whether the Chinese brand will be imported to Thailand a lot more than the local assembly will probably be here. So this is something that we have to keep close monitoring with. Let's move to the next one. Okay, a little bit about the XEV policy, the roadmap here in Thailand. We have the strategy or the government policy, which is called 30 at 30. It means that 30% of the BEV production, or I would say 30% of XEV production by the year 2030. So this target has been already announced by the National Electric Vehicle Committee, headed by the Deputy Prime Minister since the beginning of this year. As you can see, the movement here in this graph coming from the year 2019 and 2020 with the forecast of BEV sales in this year around 3,000 or maybe 4,000. And then we will climb up gradually until we hit, let's say, around 30% production of the entire production forecast in 2030 at 2.5 million, which means that about 375,000 would be BEV and 375,000 would be the hybrid and plug-in hybrid. This is the, I would say, the vision that Thailand has at the moment. And if we think that the movement or the trend is quite ambitious, let's move to the next one on the next government proposal to the industry. Go to the next one, please. So this is a new proposal by the government, which has just been discussed in September among the Office of the Industrial Economics and the car makers here in Thailand, together with the association, of course. The idea for the government is that when looking at the electric vehicle bans around the world, we are starting to see that in many countries, the year 2030, we will see the ICE ban in Europe, and also Terence also talk about the ICE ban possibility in Singapore as well. So Thailand is also looking very closely on this situation. And now they propose that maybe the previous plan of 30 at 30 would not be valid anymore. They believe that it can be achieved much higher percentage or even sooner in terms of the year. And therefore, the proposal now they include the scenario of 50 at 30 or 50% of the XEV production in 2030, or even up to 70% of the XEV production by the year 2030. So which means that there will be a lot of changes coming in this period. And of course, what is going to change is a lot of the support structure that we inform the government that, well, it's not wrong to set out the ambitious plan, but of course you have to put in the practical solution for people to move from ICE to BEV, and that is support the user with the incentive of, let's say, both sides, both monetary and both non-monetary. So some of the proposal that we have been discussing with the government is, of course, the tax deduction for those who buy the electric vehicle. It could deduct the personal income tax, or it could deduct from the corporate income tax. So this is one scenario in terms of the monetary support. For the non-monetary support, it could be, like free toll, free charge for on the tollway, or parking space for BEV in the city. So these are ongoing with the discussion. And if we look at the scheme for the government to move from 30/30 to basically maybe 50/30, then we probably see the phase out of the ICE already in 2040 if this plan would be announced or would be made as the official target for the country. And I think this is quite the crucial topics to discuss with so many parties in terms of the parts component supplier, because as you know, Thailand has been the #1 ranking in terms of the automotive production. So we have quite a lot of the parts supplier to the ICE industry, and that has to change because now the trend is quite positive, and we see the direction which has come much sooner than what we expected. So I think there's going to be a lot of the movement in terms of the incentive, in terms of the support scheme from the government to the industry. Let's move to the next one. So currently, if we look at the number of charging stations here in Thailand, on the top right bracket, you can see that we have around 1,818 available sockets in both AC and DC chargers, and that is available in about 557 locations across the country. This is not a lot at this point, and on your left in purple, you can see the target that is basically being discussed with by the government. They're looking to increase to about 10,000 stations within 2022. So in 2 years' time, to jump from what we have around 1,800 to 10,000, and within 2030, about 100,000 of the charging stations. This is quite ambitious, and of course, when you look at the chart here, for those of you who might familiar with the provider names, the top one with about 1,559 charging point is the company called Energy Absolute, or abbreviation is EA. EA is the biggest player in terms of the energy solutions, in terms of the charging infrastructure. So a lot of the charging station has been installed across the, I would say, the city, and of course in other provinces as well. And they're still ongoing with the expansion. And together with that, we also have the Metropolitan Electric Authority, or even the Provincial Electric Authority are also installing charging station to serve the customer as well. So this is basically being installed gradually, and so we expect to see a lot more of the charging network to come. But one point, you might see different brands across the chart here. And what we try to do on the next one, let me just walk you through the next slide. This is what we call the EV Charging Consortium Initiative, hosted by the Electric Vehicle Association. We believe that when we have different brands, different providers, of course, the trouble is that if you don't link all the charging station under one charging system and under one, let's say, one card access for the customer, it would be quite troublesome for the customer to carry different cards whenever they go to a different brand or whatsoever. So we initiate the so-called EV Charging Consortium to make sure that all the charging point with the OCPP can be, let's say, communicate and exchange data between one another. And this is the project that we signed the MOU with the 11 partners that you can see the logos here, including the authority as well, in July of 2020. And the project is to basically link all the provider under one system, where we can use one card or even one QR code to access different machines, just like you use ATM. And later on, to be able to cross-charge to the different it doesn't matter where you charge the car at, you get the billing at the end of the month to your own address under one scheme. So let's move to the next one. This is the outlook of the timeline that we have with the EV Charging Consortium. This is the platform where we would like to connect the 11 providers in the network. And as said, the MOU has been signed already in July, and now the next one, which is probably in the beginning of next year, we would do the data transfer testing between stations. And after that, within let's say around the towards the third or fourth quarter of 2021 to the beginning of 2022, we would make the billing payment settlement across the local network. This is a plan that we have for the local Thailand in the country at this point. And on the next phase, what we try to achieve, or what we hope to achieve, is to basically to connect the consortium or the charging cooperation with our neighboring countries within ASEAN. So namely to Malaysia, to Singapore, and to Cambodia or Myanmar. That would make it easier for the drivers to drive and to be able to charge with one system overall within ASEAN. So this is the plan that we have within about 2023. So basically trying to achieve what we can to make sure that it is easy access charging point for all the user, whether it's via the passenger car or commercial trucks. We believe this model would be, let's say, very useful for the EV driver in the coming period, and also promote the charging network in overall. And therefore, I think it's good for us to be able to talk to CharIN and making sure that whatever CharIN is developed, and we try to align the development here in ASEAN in line with what CharIN is doing in the European and in other countries as well. So I believe this is my last chart for today, and next one I would be open for any question that Jacques may have. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Krishna. I have a first question about the 0% import taxes for Chinese cars. So that will mean that there is no investor from China will come and build an electric car in Thailand. And at the same time, it will frighten other investors to put money into Thailand to build an electric car if they are facing production from China, which makes it very difficult to reach the same volumes as China has. So what is your take on that?
Okay. Basically, when looking at the tax structure with the 0% import duty from the FTA between Thailand and China, I would have thought that, well, the Chinese car maker would not invest in Thailand anymore because there's no sense. You know, why do they come here? Because they can basically export the car directly from China to the market. But maybe the strategy was wrong, because we recently have the Great Wall Motors just purchased the plant from GM, and they will invest with the 3 models, for starting with the pickup trucks, and then the sport activity vehicle, and then of course the BEV as well. So this has been announced already by Great Wall Motors coming from China to invest here in Thailand. That's one thing. Another thing is that I would say that majority of the existing car maker here in the country, so namely Toyota, Honda, Nissan, and Mercedes-Benz also, they apply for the BEV local production with the Board of Investment. So with the submission, it means that they intend to go ahead with the BEV production here in Thailand using the existing plant facility that they have for the BEV. So I believe that this is a strategy for different car makers to still maintain the investment here in Thailand, regardless of the FTA that we are talking. Of course, it means that we have to be price competitive in order to compete with the Chinese brand, which is coming from China.
Right. What will be the charging standard, or what is the charging standard that the Chinese car makers are installing on the cars?
Okay, so basically, in Thailand, we basically set out for the Type 2. This is for the plug-in hybrid, and for the DC charging, it has not yet been decided yet which one will be the standard. But the most common one that you will see in the charging network across the country is the combo CCS Type 2 at the moment.
Okay, good, good,
Yep.
good. Thank you. Sivam, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. On a very light note, what's a hamburger crisis?
Oh, okay. The hamburger crisis is basically when you have the mortgage crisis in US. So it's more or less the global crisis. So it's not the local crisis, but of course it hit the world and also to Thailand as well. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. No, it just sounded delicious. I mean, naming crisis after food. But okay.
We also had the Tom Yum Goong crisis as well in the past,
Oh,
right?
yes.
That,
Shrimp soup. Yes. Yeah. I mean,
Right.
I like how you name your crises. Shall we
Right.
go on to this? Jack, should we start the panel discussion?
Well, there is still a polling question. Yeah,
My mistake.
there's one polling question, and basically is about multiple standards. Will multiple standards hinder the development of e-mobility or help the development of e-mobility?
Interesting. So let's see.
Yeah, it will be very important for your roaming application.
That's right. I would say the one standard of the charging strategy would be quite helpful in terms of the investment of the providers to have just one. So yes, of course, the answer is correct. It would be hinder to the development in our viewpoint. So yeah.
Interesting.
Good.
Yeah. Good. Well, I think we can bring in all the other speakers and we can have a brief panel discussion now.
Yes, please.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Hi, Cliff. I have a question for you that probably all the other members can also work on. You mentioned about the growth of EV in Hong Kong. What about the network, the grid? Is the grid at the moment able to take on all these electric cars, or will it be ready for the future, or will you have to control how cars are charged, or will the, let's say, Hong Kong Electric, China Light and Power, will they all go for alternative energies, renewable energies, to be able to give enough power to the place?
First of all, for the power supply for the generation, according to the power company, there's more than enough generation for those electric vehicles in Hong Kong, if there's a high portion even. But of course, for the distributed network, just like in the building, the network, especially for those old and existing buildings, there's not that good enough for supporting all those electric vehicle charging in every parking lot. So we have to decide maybe using the load management system or even some other strategy to help those buildings to deploy the scalable charging stations. So and also in Hong Kong, we do not have the sufficient space for building the wind farms. But in the past 1 to 2 years, we have also have some scheme for using the solar panels. And the two power company in Hong Kong, they are subsidizing, paying back, we can say, purchase the solar, the energy collected from the solar panel with the high price to the maybe the village house owners and also some buildings owner if they build the solar panel on their rooftop. And I think it is one of the source that maybe can be a scalable source for those rural areas But I think it may not be the main supply for supporting the whole infrastructure of the EV charging.
Any input?
Actually, I think that would be a valid question for all the panelists, because we have seen that grid is generally an issue when we start scaling up the electric vehicles on the roads. Do any of you see this as an immediate problem, or is this something that you think will be addressed as the vehicle adoption increases? One by one, anyone, please.
Maybe I can I can share my thoughts about this.
Please.
So in EV charging, one thing that we want to recommend is that EV charging should be smart charging, especially so when it's high powered or fast charging, right? They have to be smart, and by smart, right, we mean that the charging rate can actually be throttled up or down according to what the grid is capable of providing. So at different times of the day, at different certain times of the day when the energy is cheaper or when energy is more accessible, the charging rate should be higher. And then certain time of the day when energy is expensive and it's in shortage, that high-powered charging should be discouraged. So you can plug it in, but the amount of power that you are drawing is still going to be limited. So with this amount of smart charging, it actually allows you to operate closer to the limit where the grid is able, the localized distribution is able to supply.
Okay.
Yeah, Shivam, Alika this side. So Shivam, just to address your question, of course, we are in India. We are basically seeing electric vehicles or the high-power charging as one of the flexibility options for the power system. So when you're talking about the high share of renewables, especially solar systems, so essentially it generally generates during the daytime. So we are also seeing how the renewable power, or it can be utilized during daytime to powering the EVs. Of course, what Teres has very correctly mentioned, the smart charging or that the charging during off-peak hours, that is one of the control has to be taken in place. But of course, again, as I told, increasing penetration of renewables, especially solar, we are also considering this charging as one of the flexibility option of the power system point of view.
Okay.
Trista, from your customers, have you heard of any issues when it comes to charging of their vehicles, or at the government discussions, whatever? Trista, for you specifically.
Okay, sorry.
No problem. No worries.
Can you repeat the question again?
I will. We are all getting used to virtual meetings anyway. When it comes to your customers, or when it comes to the government discussions, is there any talk about the grid starting to fail, or whether the grid capability is enough when it comes to specifically Thailand?
Okay. In principle, when talking about electric availabilities, this is not a problem. We are discussing with the Metropolitan Electric Authority. They have already researched the potential usage of the BEVs and the potential growth that we are looking at the strategy that we just talked about, 30 at 30 or even 50 at 30. There's no concern regarding the electric or the power shortage in that sense. But I agree with what Terence already talked about, which is the smart charging. I think it's quite crucial for the city or for the country to develop the smart charging for the network, making sure that it is the, let's say, the balance of the electric or the power under the different time period, day or night. I think this is also information for the user should be aware of as well, because in each vehicle they can basically set the timing where they want to charge the vehicle, whether they want to kick off the charging at midnight or maybe at 1 or 2. So this can be set on the vehicle as well. So I think it's a good information for the users to be aware of what the charge rate would be and what would be the best timing that they should prepare prepare for the charging planning as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have a question from the audience that I'm actually not very clear on. It says, what is LATAM? Does anyone know what this is about?
How do you spell it?
LATAM. It was probably
this is a question that I will answer later on. It was not actually a question.
Okay. Understood. Okay, so next is the audience question. I'll put it to all of you in sequence. Which do you think is effective? 50 kilowatt into 3 plugs or 150 kilowatt single? From your perspectives, I mean, all of you come from different perspectives, different regions. Maybe I can start with, say, Cliff first.
From our point of view, especially in the city that we are located in, actually the very high power charging solution in Hong Kong may be a solution to maybe for those car owners who do not have their own charging at home. And of course, faster is the best for those users. But come to the reality is for the existing building is depends on the available power supply. I think it's the case by case basis.
Okay, Alekya, sir.
Yes, Shivam, again, it is depends on the completely on the use cases, but of course, seeing the current distribution infrastructure, if I say for Indian context, of course, the distributed manner will prefer to start with, maybe 50 kilowatt in 3 different locations. That would be very in sync with the distribution network that is designed in India. But again, it completely depends on the use cases and the life of the batteries, because we are talking about the high power charging, the ampere flows to the batteries, and the degradation of the batteries. So those are the conditions to be.
Understood, sir. Krista?
Yeah, I believe that different use case apply to different scenario, and in Thailand at the moment, due to the fact that most of the, I would say, when looking at the geography of the BEV buyers, most of them buy BEVs because they know that they can install the wall box at home. So for them, they have the peace of mind of being able to charge at home more than relying on the public network. Of course, public would build the confidence for them that they will not be running, without the power anywhere. But the majority of them would be installing the wall box at home and charging at home as the first priority. So I believe that the convenience of the charging at home would probably be the best solution for Thailand at the moment. Fast charging is of course very good if we have it on the, let's say, on the highway and you're on the move, from one province to the next, and that would be very helpful to accelerate the growth of the BEV. Yeah.
Sure. Terence?
I agree with all the other panelists who have spoken. They have shared very valid points. If I were to choose, of course, I would definitely want to have more charging points as compared to focusing onto one. But of course, that's in different state of implementation. Right. In the early state, right, we need more. We need more quantity. Then as we start to have more understanding about what is the bottleneck, then after that we can start to say, okay, here's where fast charging might make more sense than slow charging, because by then everywhere would have slow charging ready.
Done. Thank you. Jack, you want
to
take
we
it
can
from
go to a,
not asking
yeah,
you to answer.
We can go to the next actually. Sorry?
Next polling.
Yeah, we go to the next polling question.
Yes, please.
Let's go to the next polling question to the listeners, and it's basically the question is, in which location do you expect e-mobility to grow fastest? Next polling question, please. Oh, all right. So let's go for this one then. In which area do you think electrification will be most attractive? For buses, passenger cars, light commercial vehicles, or two-wheelers?
Jacques, I really wish I can vote. Very tempted to vote, but I can't vote.
Yes, let's
answer, not to worry. Once they're done, you're allowed to answer, not to worry.
Yeah.
Yeah, as expected. Yeah.
Oh, I expected buses to be higher. I mean,
Shivam, this is not the answer from India, I guess.
Okay. So then, I mean, for us at least in India, I expect buses to be faster when it comes to adoption than passenger cars. But that's again a country issue. I mean, it depends on import policy, manufacturing,
Yes.
incentives, everything. It is interesting. Yeah. Yes.
But the buses are the ones that are polluting most in the cities. So I would also have expected that there would be a lot of incentives from government to electrify the transport, so to go for buses. And I think that is something I see at least in Singapore, where there is really a push to go electrify the whole bus network.
No, that's the low-hanging fruit. I mean,
yeah, that's what I would expect. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So,
yes, please.
Yes, sorry, I just wanted to say that the fleets are actually the most they are the most interesting customers to the network operators, the EV charging network operators, because the fleets have much more guarantee of return on investment. So they have much more higher mileage, and it's more predictable in that sense. So that's why a lot of the charging network operators, they see that fleets provide a better ROI on their investments.
Okay.
Right.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
That's true for India also, I guess.
There is still one more polling. So no, don't worry. There is one more polling question, I think. And that polling question is: in which region do you think that e-mobility will be fully introduced in the market first? So we have here heard from different perspectives from different regions. So depending on what the government decides or implements, we can expect that the e-mobility will speed up or maybe go slower than in other regions. So it would be interesting to see how the listeners feel on the area they think will go the fastest. So here we go. Oh,
okay.
Singapore is #1. Okay.
I think it's quite sad for the secretary of Hong Kong.
Wow.
Although we are the #1 among those.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think.
Can I say something?
Please go ahead.
I wanted to say that. Yeah. I wanted to say that polling and the real result might be different. So I think over the next few years, it's a matter of implementation, and I'll be most happy to, if this is real, I'll be glad to give all of you guys. I'll buy you beer in 2030.
I'll take you up on that.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, but we must have to put more effort in Hong Kong.
I think Shivam, I think this is not a good comparison when you are comparing India with other geographies, because we
are bigger, we are much more spread out, and generally we have a smaller disposable income when it comes to vehicles. Yes, I accept it, but it's an audience response. That's all. Please take it for what it is. Polls can be wrong. We saw that multiple times in elections. Yes.
Krishna, I'm a little bit surprised to see 6% because the outlay you gave on what the government is doing, the efforts that the government is doing to attract investment or to allow people to buy EVs cheaper, they're doing pretty good effort. So what is your take on the reason that only 6%? Because 56% are Singaporeans listening in, and not enough Thai people listening in.
Probably that.
I think that could be the reason why. So I have to reserve my beer.
We'll still take it though.
No. No, but it's
Yeah,
it's quite surprising to see only 6%.
I think the key takeaway is that every country has a lot to learn from each other, best practices, and learning lessons has to be shared, between the EP associations. Every country is different, every country is unique, and we all do need to develop at our own pace. At the end of the day, it's not about the speed, but it's about the how minimal impact you provide to the lives of the people there, right? You don't electrify everyone, and then everyone will have problems with EV charging. So that becomes a second order problem. So we want to have a more sustained, balanced electrification journey.
Okay. There was another question coming in from the public, and I have to ask you, Terence, is will Singapore's EV infrastructure have a spillover into Malaysia? So will there be, let's say, a Singapore Power charging stations in Malaysia, or so other brands, Greenlot charging stations in Malaysia?
Well, that is a question, a very valid question, and I do see that from experience in other parts of Europe and North America, the charging networks tend to go across borders. So like what Krista has shared, in that cross-border charging, it is going to be a big deal in future, and cross-border charging. Collaboration between the charging networks is key to ensuring that the users, regardless of which country they are from, they would be able to enjoy that seamless charging process. So I don't have a straight answer for you. That is really more of a projected end result that we hope that the charging networks will collaborate with each other across borders.
Right.
Okay.
I have a question here which addresses Europe also. So, Klaas, I'm going to ask you also this. So, the question from the audience is there an initiative addressing charging at home or in the condo, especially if you have rented a condo? It says in Europe that has turned out to be a big roadblocker, now to be overcome by regulation. So, Klaas, can you just jump in and say what was the issue with regards to this, and maybe the others can say if they are seeing similar indications in their markets? You're on mute.
Thanks for asking, and I enjoy to be member of the Asian team, even if I report about Europe. But that I have information currently, so we put two strategic there's a right for a plug within condos that gives access to everybody by law. So you have to agree with
I have a problem.
But the principal right.
Klaas, we can't hear you properly. You're breaking up.
Okay, just increasing.
We cannot hear you, Klaas.
Your signal's breaking up, actually.
No.
No. What I can do is we'll maybe talk to the others first and then come back to you if you need to reset your internet or something. Whoever wants to go first. No. Your webcam's also probably maybe it's a network issue.
Klaas, maybe what you can do is switch off your camera and only put on the loudspeaker. Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm in. Okay. Yeah. It was one regulation that is a right for a plug for rental condos, and the second is that is accompanied by a funding program that is around $1,000 per customer who is investing in private charger, and that includes the charger and the installation fees. And that is done by an easy principle. To just have to send your receipts and bills to the government, and you get 1,000 euros out of that. And that is currently a 200 million euro program. And so that really helps to give the customer the right to install infrastructure at home. And that will be accompanied by a funding program for commercial industry. And so that is really the kick, in addition to the public charging infrastructure, to optimize the home installation. And the rule behind is that has to be intelligent. That comes back to Terrence's view on smart charging, and that is going back to green energy supply. And so we are driving green energy in intelligent smart charging, and that is accompanied by laws at the right of charging and the law or the funding program to make it possible for everybody. And that is not attached to any other programs. You don't need to buy a car or something. Just who is going to put a charger into its home, he gets the funding money. That is German stuff currently, and there are some other countries in Europe working on that right for plug.
Okay.
Klaus, sorry, Klaus, you said 200 million euro?
Yeah, for private owners, and that will be added by a 350 million program for industry at their sites as well.
Wow.
That means if you have a big parking lot for your employees, you can get access to that money as well.
Klaus, follow-up question. That sounds really great. I mean, the initiative for the German government to promote EV charging within the condominiums. But I'm just wondering, for the condominiums, do they need to vote in order to get access to this funding? Do they need to vote to agree to install, or that can be a process that can be bypassed?
That is it's a right for everybody on his own expenses, and if you come to a specific level of agreement, so that will be shared cost. So if you agree with others, so you can share that cost amongst others, and the level of agreement is quite low if you're coming over 2/3, so that will be shared. But in principle, you have the right to do it on your own expenses.
I see, but at your own expenses, but with support from certain infrastructure grant. Okay, got it. Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you, Klaus.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question as well. Is the subsidy is a matching fund concept, or just a lump sum, a fixed amount of the fund for each condominium?
Lump sum. It's because they decided to make it easy to everybody, and so there is no percentage. That is easy applying for that, and afterwards you just have to state by bills that you spend more than $1,000, and for that case you get the 1,000 back. It's precisely 900 euros, and that's it. Not more, not less, for everybody, easy access.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
Okay. Good. All right. I think we're coming at the end of our session. Unless somebody still has a question or something outstanding, then I would like to thank everyone for listening in, and also I would like to thank the speakers for giving your time for these presentations. So thank you very much. And this CharIN Asia Tuesday event is the last one. So we had one about plug and charge, we had one about V2G, and now this one was about what is happening in the different Asian countries. And seeing the success that we have had in the past sessions, and also the European sessions, probably we'll be doing this again in the near future. Probably we'll be back in 2021, unless Klaus says it's only in 2022.
No, I will get my beer from Terence, and so I try to do everything to get that for free.
Okay.
So
Good.
hopefully we can catch up very soon, and physically in person, of course, with all the
Yes.
social safe distancing measures in place.
Correct.
We hope
All
so
right.
too. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks
to
a lot.
all.
Bye.
See you all.
Thank you.
Bye.